just a shout out to anyone who's just joined to say you are very, very welcome. And I'm really grateful for the time that you are giving or that your schools are giving you to be able to be here this afternoon. So this afternoon's session is the ECTP New Facilitator Briefing. It's aimed at facilitators who haven't worked with the NIOT before or who have but haven't delivered the Early Career Teacher Programme previously. And this session will be aimed at facilitators who are working on any element of the ECTP, whether that's for mentors or whether that's for ECTs or both. So if you're in any of those categories, you're very welcome this afternoon. And my name's Katie Micklewright. I'm the head of the Early Careers faculty at the National Institute, and I will be hopefully telling you what you need to know this afternoon. The session is due to run for 45 minutes. If you do need to drop off or you miss anything, as I said at the beginning, just for the purposes of those who've just joined, this will be recorded and we'll share it via your associate college or your National Institute campus. Just so that you know, it's just me today. Normally I'd have a colleague who's keeping an eye on the chat. I will try to stop so that people can ask questions during the session. However, if there's something that you wanted to ask, please feel free to stay at the end and I'll make sure that there's some time available for that. So without further ado, let's get started. So we always start with the National Institute's values, and these values are upheld by everyone who works with and for the NIOT. And we wish to instill these always in our work with ECTs, mentors and schools in every interaction. So through you, as a highly valued expert facilitator, we hope this to be made possible during the seminars, the conversations that you have with colleagues in those groups. So be really grateful for you just taking a moment to read and consider how these resonate with you in your practice as a facilitator, as an educator, whether that's in school or not. Just take a moment and consider how this aligns with your own work and beliefs. You'll become familiar with these values over your time working with us, and we're absolutely so excited to have new colleagues joining the facilitation team. So a massive shout out to all of you, because of course you've been selected and interviewed and so on to join the programme and to work with your associate college or National Institute of Teaching campus, especially because of the expertise and brilliance that you bring. So I'm really excited for our ECTs and mentors who are very lucky to have you. We're going to start today by looking at the programme structure, and this will be a brief overview. Those of you who deliver introductory seminars for mentors or ECTs will see a lot more detail about this. But what I'm going to try to do today is point out the things that are most relevant for facilitation. However, when we provide materials after today's session, you'll be able to look, if you want to, at some of the handbooks associated with the programme, if you want to know a little bit more. Some of you will be familiar with the programme and some of you might work with other providers already. There are nuances and differences between each of the programmes with different providers. So though there will be similarities, I will just point out the things that are most pertinent. So let's start with the mentor programme. On the mentor programme, you'll find that we have training mentors. We also have mentors who are already partially trained or who have completed the programme already. The ones attending your seminars will be those who are training on the programme, so they've not been an ECT mentor before, or they'll be partially trained and so they're completing their programme with you. The mentor programme is specifically designed to develop mentors as mentors of teachers, not just early career teachers. And in developing the programme, we've spent a lot of time speaking to mentors and induction tutors and other colleagues to find out what they would feel most useful for them, considering themselves as teacher educators. Mentors are absolutely vital to their ECTs, as you'll be very aware, and so we really try to prioritise their development as well as that of their ECT. So things that are probably most relevant, excuse me, just plugging my laptop in, most relevant to you as a facilitator on a mentor program is that they always start with an introduction, and that will cover all of the nuts and bolts of the program, things like their roles and responsibilities, how to use the platform Prism, so a bit of logistical stuff, and there will be lots about the program and how they support their ECTs. But the things I kind of want to highlight are the fact that the program for mentors is specifically designed around what they need to be a teacher educator and support beyond just their ECT program. So you'll notice that the titles of the seminars are things that are quite relevant at the moment. These might change in the future, but they're things that mentors told us they wanted to know more about. And hopefully they'll be interesting to you as a facilitator too. Obviously, we might add didagogy into Seminar B as well. We know that's a really interesting thing at the moment. So just to kind of make you aware that when mentors come to you, they will have had opportunity to engage in support materials with their ECT. So that looks at what the ECT is doing right now and how, as a mentor, I can support them. They'll also have their own self-studies, which they select throughout the year on what you can see here, if you can see the titles in the blue boxes, are really around just supporting colleagues to develop as experts in their teaching career. They also have the option to attend national expert webinars, which are large national webinars that we put on with national and international experts talking about something that's already in the framework for the programme. What you'll also notice is that there are module titles below each half term and arrows above those. That's because our programme allows schools to change the order of the modules of self-study that their ECTs and mentors engage with. However, you'll see later today why that doesn't matter in terms of the order of the seminars that mentors and ECTs attend with you. So a few just key things about mentors on the programme. Things that they are expected to kind of do as part of their role and how that fits into the broader programme. First of all, in year one, they'll have weekly meetings with their ECT, which includes a drop-in, like an observation, but a short kind of 15-minute one, with a follow-up discussion where they'll do instructional coaching and deliberate practice with their ECT, as well as checking on well-being and pastoral support and all of those other things that they'll be discussing. And in year two, that moves to fortnightly. Mentors will monitor their ECT's progress with self-study using the Prism platform, which I'll tell you more about later on. They'll use the ECT support materials in their self-study to help them prepare for their weekly meetings. And we give them a model and a template for that drop-in and feedback, what we call our observations, to support ECTs in developing their practice. As mentors, should they come to you with any concerns or anything like that about something specific in their school, of course, feel free to offer them advice if you feel comfortable doing so. However, their first port of call is the induction tutor in their school. And for new mentors, they engage with our programme, attending the live seminars and webinars with you and completing online self-study. Just going to show you a little overview of how this fits into the early career teacher programme, from moving from initial teacher training or initial teacher education into the ECT programme, what that journey looks like and how our programme is kind of set up to support ECTs once they gain QTS. And then we'll look in a bit more detail at the ECT programme now that we've seen the mentor part. Hopefully you'll be able to see and hear this okay. I've tested it, but guarantee that means it won't work now. So apologies if you can't hear. If someone could give me a thumbs up using the little emojis, that would be very, very helpful.
Achieving QTS leads to the start of the Early Career Teacher Programme. Year 1 has 6 modules and begins with behaviour and relationships. Schools can follow our sequence for modules B to F or choose their own order. Each module contains a core study and diagnostic, leading to a choice of 3 out of a possible 5 elective self-studies. The ECT takes the diagnostic and, with the mentor, decides on the best 3 electives to meet their needs. A typical module lasts a half term and includes a weekly observation and mentor meeting. They also include a termly national expert masterclass. Mentors receive summary material for each module their ECT studies. Plus, they get to choose 3 out of 5 self-studies that support their development as teacher educators. They also receive termly local seminars. Year 2 follows a similar structure, but has a greater focus on developing research literacy. There is no training required for mentors during Year 2. However, they will continue to receive support material, so they are familiar with the content their ECTs will be studying.
Okay, so what you see there is an example of one of the types of materials that you'll find in introductory seminars. And the reason I've shown it to you is because it does a much better, much more succinct version of explaining the programme than I will probably do, but I will do my best. As it said in the video, something that may have changed if you've worked on the Early Career Framework or the ECT programme previously is that mentors now only train for 1 year. However, the ECTs will continue to train for 2 years. And facilitators' role is to really help ECTs to embed their learning and bring it to life by supporting them to kind of take evidence and research from the self-studies that they do each week and support them to consider more closely how it might apply in their own setting. You will know way more about their setting than, for instance, I would be able to in writing the programme, because you'll be working locally. You might even be in the same school or trust as them if you're a teacher yourself. And that expertise gives you the ability to contextualise and bring real life understanding to each seminar. That helps the ECTs in turn to not only implement, but also to retain that learning for their future career. And as I show you the materials, you'll see that we really want you to bring that context and to make those adaptations to the materials that you receive to kind of facilitate those sessions. So in a nutshell, the ECT programme in Year 1 is similar to mentors in that they have the same module titles, and the induction tutor can swap that order to fit with the professional development in the school. However, the local seminars, the ones in light green, and the introductory seminar in the dark blue on the far left, will be delivered locally, and they are based around scenarios, which mean they bring together multiple domains of teaching. So it doesn't matter which of those topics the ECT is studying at that point in the year, the seminar will combine lots of different things. We know as educators that you can't just do behaviour and relationships without considering assessment for learning of those pupils and how to adapt and use the information you have about those students in order to develop those relationships or to be able to enforce the behaviour policy in your school. You may need to also consider things about your subject or curriculum. So we bring those things together holistically in each seminar. Again, as I say, the green part of each half term is where you come into play in contextualising all that learning that the ECTs will have been doing. And in their seminars, as I say, they happen once a half term. They're decoupled from the self-study content, so they are holistic and covering lots of different domains using a scenario-based approach. The idea being we develop that holistic teaching practice where you're considering lots of things all at once to be able to create a whole picture of how to develop best at that time. We use deliberate practice in every seminar for ECTs and for mentors. So we'll look at the model a little later on today. And all local seminars are delivered locally. So that's in your local area in Year 1. You may be delivering some online due to geographical restraints. Some of you might be working up in Northumberland and have colleagues travelling from a really long distance, for example, in which case, if you are delivering online, we will be sharing online facilitation support and guides that might help to point you in the right direction. And on every single material that we share, you'll find detailed facilitator notes and hidden slides and things that will support you. Let's have a quick look at year 2, just so that you can get an idea of how the 2 years fit together. And then we'll look in more detail at what exactly these materials look like that you'll be using. Again, if some lovely, kind person can give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that if you can hear the sound okay.
It's time for you to start year 2 of the Early Career Teacher Programme. Each module in year 2 begins with a phase and setting-specific diagnostic. You'll receive personalised feedback on your responses that will help you and your mentor identify your focus for development. You'll also use reflections, lesson observation data, and any other current targets as part of this process. Your school can decide the order of modules B to F, or they can choose to follow our suggested sequence. A typical module lasts a half term and includes fortnightly drop-ins and meetings with your mentor. Your mentors will also have the option to read summary materials for each module you study. You'll complete one course study for each module, which is comprised of 2 sections. The first section will support you to reflect on your current practice. In the second section, you will delve deeper into the piece of research that aligns with your focus area and see examples of how the theory looks in practice. In year 2, you'll use the personal professional development cycle to apply the evidence into your teaching. This replaces the weekly actions you had in year 1 of the ECT programme. Your mentor will support you to plan how you will make changes to your current practice, drawing on what you have read in your course study. You will implement the plan over a half term, adapting it as needed. Lesson drop-ins and mentor meetings will focus on reviewing your progress. You'll continue to have seminars that will allow you to collaborate with peers and build on your studies. 3 of these have a subject and phase-specific focus. You'll also have 3 brilliant national expert webinars to attend over the year, with an opportunity to hear from leading educational experts. The second year of the ECT programme will provide an opportunity for you to critically engage with research through a personalised pathway of study. It supports your journey to becoming an effective, evidence-informed teacher and future leader who can make a real, long-lasting impact on the pupils you work with.
Okay, so you'll have noticed that there are a couple of key differences just from the video there. And one of those is that 3 out of the 6 seminars are subject or phase specific. And you may well be delivering both local seminars and those that are specific to your subject or phase, or you may just be doing one or the other. And either way, this is just as relevant, hopefully. And the reason that we have those subject and phase seminars is to make sure that in particular domains of kind of education learning, the teachers get opportunity to consider how that fits around their subject knowledge, the developmental phase of their children, and so on and so forth, with an expert facilitator who knows their stuff in that area particularly. We sort of consider not only where colleagues may be working in kind of in a space where they're in a tiny department or a tiny school and they don't have that expertise, but also where perhaps they just want to be able to work with peers and colleagues who are having similar experiences in that subject or phase. However, for the remaining 3 local seminars in year 2, they should stay in the same groups, and hopefully you'll be able to stick with your groups throughout year 1 and year 2 and really get to know them, get to know their context and their kind of interests, just like you would with a school class. I appreciate it's much more tricky when you only see them a few times a year. However, you'll build great relationships with them. I've really enjoyed having my science ECTs over the last couple of years, and it's great to see those familiar faces every time. The other key difference in year 2 is you will have noticed that implementation cycle, basically their personal development pathways. And that is there to build ECT's kind of research literacy. So they feel confident in implementing new things when they need to, and considering how they reflect on that and measure how impactful or useful they are in order to make adaptations themselves, hoping to build that in the long term over the course of their career. So their seminars do something very similar. They are scenario based. They include deliberate practice. And the aim there is for them to come to you as those experts who are going to help them contextualize some of the things they've been reading in the research. And they have 3 studies to choose from each half term. When they come to you, they'll have read them, but they'll have focused on one specifically. However, that will be their opportunity to discuss that with peers that they've been working with, and to get your guidance on how that might look in that specific subject or phase. And we give you lots of support to do that. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm just going to skip past this next slide, excuse me. So the professional development cycle, your seminars are a really important part of this, because wherever they fall, it will allow them to practice using some deliberate practice with you and with their peers, what they're trying to implement in their classrooms, and also get some feedback from some different perspectives. They will always get that from their mentor. However, this other opportunity will allow them a different way of thinking about what they've been doing in school. And in terms of the subject and phase seminars in year 2, some of you may be delivering year 2 from September. Some of you that might not be for another year or so. However, at the moment, it's seminar B, D, and E. And we look at instructional design and memory in seminar B through the lens of a subject or phase the teacher is in. Likewise, subject knowledge to support learning and assessment in seminar E. So, like year 1 seminars, they're decoupled from the self-study content. They take a scenario-based approach to holistically bring together those domains and consider different things that the ECTs have learned since they started training a couple of years before. They have 1 per half term, just like in year 1. And in year 2, they're not all local seminars. Excuse that mistake there. They are half subject and phase, half local. And again, the facilitator notes and hidden slides will give you lots of guidance. And a note before we look at what that guidance and those materials look like, just to say that I've referenced Prism a couple of times. Some of you might have joined a bit later, but that's our learning management system, or the platform or website where ECTs and mentors can engage with self-study materials. It's where they record meeting notes, and it's also where they can revisit learning and watch recordings of seminars at a later date if they wanted to come back to them, or if for an extenuating reason they'd missed something. When this seminar this afternoon is over, we'll share these slides with you so that you can access all of these links, and you can see a little walkthrough of what Prism looks like from different perspectives. And there are lots of materials there, but these are the ones we would kind of recommend that you look at as a facilitator before you deliver your seminars. So without further ado, let's look at those seminars. So the first thing to highlight is, of course, that you need to be really well prepared. And we give you lots of tools to use. You may choose not to use all of these. The reason there is such a range is because we know that people prefer to do this in different ways. The one thing we do ask is that all facilitators watch the recorded walkthrough for every live seminar they are going to deliver. It's between 15 and 20 minutes long, but it takes you through exactly what's covered, anything we think might be tricky that you might need to consider in more depth, where you might ask questions, how you might do that, and all sorts of other things. You're provided with a slide deck. So, of course, familiarise yourself with that, the timings, animations, if there are any videos and all of those sorts of things, and have a read of the hidden slides at the start of the slide deck, which I'll show you an example of in a moment. And, of course, finding out as much as you can about your group's context can be really helpful. It's like getting a new class in September. at the beginning of term, you don't know that much about them, but you might have a bit of data or information, for instance, about what school they're from, or perhaps what subject or phase they teach. Maybe you might even get information about how they trained. It depends. Your associate college or campus will be able to provide you with a little bit of information that might help you with things like seating plans, for example, or considering where maybe you've got a big group of mathematicians, you might want some more examples from maths, for example. So it allows you to contextualize the seminar accordingly, and you'll get detailed notes under each slide that includes, first of all, what you could say, but also suggestive responses to misconceptions. It includes stretch questions to challenge ECTs and mentors who are really on the ball and have already got it. There's lots there. Read it. It's not a script, though. Please just want to always be clear. There's some really key bits in there, but it should be you that's speaking, not the script that's written there. It's there to guide you, and it will feel very formal and robotic if you did read the script. Obviously, when you're planning, you would think about how you would assess, check retrieval, do retrieval practice, check prior knowledge, and adapt throughout accordingly. You'll see in a moment, we don't expect you to deliver every slide. We don't expect you to deliver absolutely everything that you read. I'll show you how you can make those decisions in just a moment. And of course, think about how you make sure that everyone is involved and engaged throughout the session. So we'll give you lots of different things. First of all, guidance and materials for every seminar. You're never going to be doing anything from scratch, just adapting and contextualizing, much like you would if you work in a trust where you're given the materials and the curriculum, but you know you need to adapt it for your class and the pupils in it. Slide decks, alongside that compulsory video walkthrough with colour coding to help you prepare. You'll get a facilitator guidance document, which some of our facilitators absolutely rely on, and they'll have it in the seminar with them to guide them through what's coming next. Again, you might choose not to use that. That's totally fine. We're not checking. The only thing that's compulsory is the video walkthrough. You'll find evidence links for every single piece of evidence that's in each seminar. Again, no expectation that you read them all. However, your ECTs and mentors may have, and so it's there if you did want to kind of signpost them in the right direction. There is no expectation that you know everything, and it's totally fine to say, do you know what? I'm not actually sure. Let's find out. And you will have support from your associate college or campus. You'll get evaluation feedback from participants. We ask for that every session, and developmental feedback from a facilitator development kind of observation that will happen once a year, as well as facilitator development conferences, some of which are happening in the next few weeks. So let's have a look at the slides. The first is a note on registration, which seems like a silly thing to spend time on, but it's just to say that ECTs and mentors register via a QR code, which they can scan if they've got a device, or a link which you can send to them or pop up on the screen for them to type into their laptop or whatever's easiest. And they're asked to provide their teacher reference number, their TRN, an email address and name. If they don't know it, they will have had an email from us at the start of the programme, which will have all that information there, so they can just copy and paste it. At the end of each seminar, we ask them to share their evaluation insights. What do they think about the session, the facilitation, the content that's in the slides, etc.? And the response rate to this is extremely important. Please ensure that you build time into your seminar for this. And if it helps, you're welcome to move this slide to a point in the seminar that works best for you to get 100% response rate. So for instance, if you're going to have a break at some point and you think, actually, we've done the bulk of the content here, I really want them to do it now because there's time, that's fine. Please do add details if there's yellow highlighting, like your name, so that they spell that correctly and we can get the feedback to you. And if you'd like your feedback, do ask your associate college or campus for it. It informs the future development of the content, the materials, the programme for the participants. So we're really grateful for your support in getting great response rates to this. This is the first time we're delivering year 2 in September, so we don't have any feedback on it yet. So it's super important for us to be able to make adaptations. So next, we'll have a quick look at colour coding and timings, and you will see slides in every session that you deliver that reminds you of this. So don't feel you have to memorize it or write it all down now. The idea is that these provide flexibility and make it really clear to you which slides need to be included, which ones you can ignore, which ones you can decide on based on, for example, prior knowledge of your group. So we want to make sure we have consistent delivery. So let's see what they are. First of all, we have green, and the dots are on the slides themselves. That's content that must be covered. Please still contextualize it. If it's about building relationships with children, and you know the schools that your teachers in your group are in always do a line-up in the morning. Include that. That's useful for them to consider. There are lots of examples, but it's usually kind of evidence that they need to cover on those sorts of slides. We then have lilac slides where there's an activity. That means you might shorten it, you might lengthen it. You might decide to ask more questions. You might decide to put them into groups or mix them up and put them into pairs, or use an app if you're delivering online to get responses and feedback. Blue will deepen understanding or address misconceptions. You can completely skip those slides if you find out that the mentors in that session know everything there is to know about that, and you're pretty confident because you've just done some retrieval practice with them. They've got it. Just skip it. That's totally fine. We don't want to waste anyone's time teaching them to suck eggs. However, they are there. If you find that in your group there's a misconception and you think, right, I'm going to need to just recap this, those blue slides are there for that. And finally, there are optional content slides. And these, again, might be good to add clarification, to really go into depth if someone had a question about something, for example. And you might use them if that formative assessment indicates that really there's a big gap in knowledge that we need to dig deeper into. So you might get a slide deck that looks like it's 80 slides long, and actually only sort of 20 of them are the ones you need in that 90-minute seminar. So, for example, slides which cover evidence will have a red spot. These ones may be things that they'll definitely have done in their self-study, that they've definitely covered during teacher training, but you might find that your ECTs couldn't remember what the different types of cognitive load were, and so you just want to show them this little model and remind them of that, because it's going to help with the next section of the seminar. You'll have other optional slides. So this one is a video about using recordings on Prism for lesson drop-ins. If someone's got a question about something and you're like, I don't know because I'm not a mentor and I'm not sure what it looks like, there will be something there to help you. In this case, it's an annoying video of my face telling them about it. So those ones will be optional. You have core learning. These are the ones that you're definitely going to need. So for instance, this one is a scenario which sets up the scene for the whole rest of the seminar. If you didn't do that one, it would make the seminar really difficult to deliver. They're concepts that the ECTs need to achieve the intended learning outcomes, basically. And they intentionally are designed to highlight key messages. In the notes, you'll find key questions that you could ask the ECTs, for example, to draw out more about their knowledge. And there will be slides that provide the opportunity for stretch, challenge, and also for collaboration within the group that you've got there. So those, again, are really important. And you might contextualize these still. So, for instance, if the scenario doesn't feel quite right for the group, if you've got a whole group of early years practitioners, for example, you might think, well, actually, I'm just going to change that slightly so the language feels more relevant. Totally fine as long as the meaning isn't lost. And you'll note that there are timings on slides. Sometimes people get a bit stuck on the timings, but as I've just said, and hopefully it's clear, these are indicative to support your planning. The overall running time of a seminar is 90 minutes, except for the introductory ones, which are a bit longer. You'll see the overall section timing and a suggested time to spend. Now, you might decide that you're going to shorten that bit because you already know that part you're going to go through quickly in order to spend more time on something else. You have flexibility, and you can also be guided by the group you are working with, as long as it doesn't take longer than 90 minutes in total, and you cover all of those green slides and those important parts like the deliberate practice. That's absolutely fine. You'll see slides like this at the beginning of each seminar. So if you don't want to use the facilitation guidance document, for example, you'll have some things highlighted here about that particular seminar, just to remind you of what there is coming up, how to use the kind of notes on the slides and so on, how to use the timing and the colour keys to be able to make sure that you cover everything that you need to. And last but not least, just to note, in the Year 2 seminars, you'll see links to the module readings. They'll mention the self-study, and you'll have prompts that encourage ECTs to connect their discussion back to their self-study reading. They're a deliberate feature of the programme to help them integrate evidence. As we know, Year 2 is more kind of focus on that evidence and implementation with the seminar content and their classroom practice. So as a facilitator, do encourage them to share relevant insights from the reading that they've done in both Year 1 and Year 2. However, in Year 2, this is kind of a more heavily kind of lent upon part of a seminar. They will have completed different readings, so you can use those discussions to draw on collective expertise. One ECT might think something different to another, or have read slightly different evidence to another. That's totally fine. This is their opportunity to share that. You'll notice that you have a readings guide provided with really concise summaries of what those different readings are that the ECTs have covered, so that you don't feel like you're on the back foot if you've not read it. So, for instance, you might just get kind of like the executive summary of that particular reading, but you'll also get the link if you wanted to read the whole piece of research. Okay. Before I go any further, just to note, all of these materials are available on our Teams channel. However, depending on which associate college or campus you're working with, they might send it all to you in an email, and that's totally fine. Or they might give you access to that Teams channel. So do just check before you start delivering how that's going to work. The reason it's different for each is some campuses and associate colleges have huge groups of facilitators, so they will brief them all together and send those materials out. Others might just have one or two brilliant facilitators who look after their groups, and therefore they might just give you the access and say, you get what you need when you need it, and then you can do the preparation in whichever way works best for you. So do just check with the associate college or campus. This section is just on deliberate practice. It's a very short one, and we'll just then spend a little bit of time looking at your development, which is equally as important as the ECTs and mentors. We use 6 principles of deliberate practice, and this model is based on Deans for Impact and the Bambrick-Santoyo model that you may have come across before. Other programs by different providers use similar models. However, we, based on feedback, have made a few slight changes, and we use the see it, name it, do it approach, which is the Bambrick-Santoyo one. We feel that this makes the process a little bit more intuitive and simpler to understand and implement, and thus more likely to have the desired impact on teacher development. So for the ECT programme, in local seminars, both ECTs and mentors will use this model to engage with scenarios, script their responses, and practice with peers. And the other thing to note is that in mentor meetings, the mentor and ECT will use exactly the same model. So this should be completely familiar and become really well embedded with the ECT and mentor. In almost all initial teacher training programs, they'll have done something very similar, if not the same. So really important that you keep insisting that deliberate practice is done as it should be. So as part of this, ECTs will identify with you and see examples and models, and we ask facilitators to model the good practice in a scenario. They'll then get opportunity to plan and do that practice themselves. Apologies. And then they'll redo it based on feedback that they get from their peers. So usually this would be a paired activity. There are a few things just to bear in mind as facilitators. That deliberate practice should be active with everyone up on their feet, unless, for example, it's creating a resource, planning learning objectives, for example, or they should be doing what they would be doing in their setting. So if it's carpet time and we're in year 1, they should be sat on the floor with their class sat in front of them, speaking as if they were in role in the class or in their setting, whether that's out on the school field, whether that's in a lab, whether that's in a classroom. They shouldn't be going, here's what I would say. They should just be delivering it as if they were in that setting. They'll focus on improving bite-sized techniques based on success criteria that you will give them. They're all included in the slides. It should be repeated and targeted and guided by your expert feedback. If you're circulating during deliberate practice and you're hearing a few people making mistakes, guide them, tell them, get them to redo it, give them some feedback based on the success criteria. And it isn't role play or improvisation, and we need you to be an advocate of this by not using that language. Explaining what you would say is not deliberate practice, and it shouldn't be a filler activity. So giving time to this is really important. And there should be feedback and activity. So we ask our wonderful facilitators to champion the intent and potential impact of effective deliberate practice. So try not to use phrases like, I know this might be a bit uncomfortable, I know it's a bit awkward. Show them that it's not. So become an advocate, prepare for how you're going to model it. Maybe you're going to work with one of the colleagues that are in the session and you're going to feed back to each other if you're lucky to be delivering in a pair of facilitators even. And set and stress, much like you would with students in a classroom. Once you've set it up, insist that people are doing it the way that they should be, so that they get the absolute most out of that really valuable short time where they're getting that feedback from their peers. I'm not ignoring question sections. I will promise to answer any questions in the chat and pause in just a moment. So we're going to spend 1 moment on your development. Just to say, really, that we think it's highly valuable. You will get observed once per academic year, minimum. That may be more than that, especially if you're delivering on multiple programmes. And you'll get personalised feedback using our facilitator development framework, which is basically like a rubric, which I'll share with you. You'll get this. There's no cloak and dagger stuff. This is there genuinely for development. And you can inform the focus. If you know someone's coming to observe you and you think, I really want some feedback on my deliberate practice, you can tell them that and they can focus on that bit of the seminar. You'll be invited to facilitator development conferences where you get to network with peers who are also facilitators across multiple programs and have sessions and workshops with experts in those areas. And you may have access to the Facilitator Teams channel where you can ask questions and share successes. You can also do that through your associate college or campus if they're sharing materials with you. You ensure new knowledge is learned and applied so we can be respectful of teachers' time. And we know that it's just as important to make sure that you get that benefit too. So if there's something that you need, please let us know and join our focus groups with facilitators that we host each term. We'll invite you along and your feedback is so important. You are there with the participants more regularly than most of us get to be. So just an example of what the Teams channel looks like, a conversation we were having a while ago about, well, at the time we were talking about AI and a session that we just had from an expert on that. The development framework, as I say, is a rubric, and you'll see in there what effective practice people would be looking for if they're observing you. And it's very much there to support development of facilitation, capturing concrete elements of what is effective and less effective facilitation. We've tried to be as concrete as possible, and it is by no means exhaustive. However, you can access it readily and look at the framework, look at the form that's used, and you can also use it to do self-reflections if you'd like to. I'll share the link. You can click on it on the screen, I think, if you wanted to have a look, but you will get this along with the slides and the recording from today. And I'm going to be quiet now and just say, no, I'm not, I lied. One last thing, which is I'm just going to leave this on the screen for a moment. Check in with your associate college or campus if you're not sure how to access materials. Make sure you watch the walkthroughs before any delivery or preparation, because it will probably save you quite a lot of time. And prepare your materials well in advance. And please just ask any questions if there's anything you're unsure of. I'll stop now so you can. If you've got what you need or you need to rush off, please feel free to do so. And I can see there is a question in the chat, so I will start with that. Will participants list their subject and phase when they book onto a seminar via Prism? So they don't book onto the seminars via Prism. They are invited by their associate college or campus, who will probably already know their subject or phase or could find out for you if you wanted to know that. Equally, it's a nice icebreaker to get people to start with, maybe making signs like you might with pupils, saying who they are, what school they're from, what subject or phase they're in. However, you should be able to get that information beforehand from the associate college or campus. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I will stay here if there are any questions. If you wanted to wait behind, you're very, very welcome. I will stop recording and I'll answer some questions now. So if you've got something specific, you're very welcome to stay, and have a lovely evening, a lovely weekend when you get there. And for those of you teaching, only 2 weeks to go. You're nearly there for most, maybe 3. Sorry if that's you.